you. Thank you for being here. You know, for those of you who don't know, I have 3 children and 10 grandchildren. I know I only look 35, but I have them. I have them. 10 grandchildren. Well, you know, when I get around Christian and Angela's kids, it just kind of brings out the pawpaw in me a little bit. And so we're up here at the front of the auditorium this morning, and I'm talking, and I'm erasing this material from last night. And Ruthie is standing up here, and she's like, I like writing on this board because you can erase it. And I said, well, what color do you think I should use today? She goes, green. And I said, okay, we're going to use green. She goes, it's the color of grass. I was like, yes, it is. Isn't that great? Oh, they're so sweet. I just love it. I sent a picture of the 2 of them to Cheryl, and she's like, they're so cute. I was like, that's what I woke up to this morning, all this cuteness. So it is such fun. I enjoy it. So today we're going to start off talking about this idea of a leader, being a leader. And as we do that, Christian, hang on. It is not working. It worked earlier. Yeah, got it on. Isn't that funny how that works? I don't know why that is. It's like it needs juice. There it is, right there. So, okay. So now we're set. What is a leader? You know, how would you describe a leader? Now, here's what we're going to do. Everybody's at a table. Y'all are kind of a pair. You know, just got the 2 of you together. How would you? I want you to talk at your table about how you would describe a leader. What words would you use? What phrases might you use? But make a list. I think everybody's got some notepads and stuff at your table, but have somebody be designated as a scribe. Sorry, you got the job. But be thinking about, she's like, I'll put my book back up. So, but make a list of, 4, 5, 6 things, whatever you would think, words that you would use to describe a leader. And so talk among yourselves at your table, make a list, and then we're going to share, take 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll share, and I'm going to write up the answers up here on the board, and we'll talk about them a little bit. But how would you describe a leader? Oh, that's a novel concept. See, the cool part about being the scribe is you don't have to come up with the ideas. You just write them down.
That's what I'm doing.
You know, isn't that cool? I think that's a smart thing. Yeah. I understand.
We've been up since before 5.
I get that too. We're looking at how you describe a leader. What words would you use or phrases? So they're making a list.
Yeah.
Your scribe has arrived. How are we coming over here? You got 3 or 4 or 5?
Yeah,
I can spell it.
that's presence.
Oh, very
like
good.
The facial,
Yeah, conduct, demeanor, or behavior.
all right, we'll put that in there.
What is this word here?
Good.
Oh. And what is this word here?
Presence.
Presence, okay. I thought that's what it was, but then I thought, well, maybe I just misread
Well,
it.
you wanted to put deportment.
Comportment.
Comportment, I'm
Not
sorry.
deportment.
I know, you're right.
If you're a bad leader,
And we were-
that's where
we
you
were
go.
afraid.
There's the opposite. You get on the boat.
Presence is a better word.
Well, and I said everybody might know.
Yeah.
And we
When the
gotta do
teacher doesn't understand the word, you probably don't want to. Yep. That's where we're at there. That's one of those brainiac words there. Oh, have y'all got 3 or 4? Yeah. Coming. Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding?
He's writing a novel.
I'm telling you, 10? 10?
There's no wrong answers, really.
We started right.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you have nothing on your
No,
list.
that one. I had one, but then he started.
Okay, cool. All right. Good. Y'all are ready. Okay. So let's, some of you are overachievers. Let's, I have a favor to ask. They need help. Not really. Can you join them? I don't want anybody sitting alone. Or you can sit here. Either way. I think it's too close for her.
Yes, it is.
She doesn't want me to spit on her when I'm talking. So. Okay, so let's share some of your answers. So the way I do this is I kind of go around table to table one at a time. So I don't want your whole list. I just want one thought from your list. And then we'll go around until we get all of the answers written down, or at least close. But, you know, well, I tell you, I was just doing a workshop in Sandpoint, Idaho, and they had a board up here like this, and so I wrote all the answers down that they gave me for the workshop that we were doing, and so they were working on something else, and so I picked the board up and I turned it around so that I could use the other side. And the guy came up and there was a little lever like this, and he goes, you know, this thing just flips. And I'm like, that'd been nice to have known before I picked it up and moved it around. But the thing is, when you flip it, you got to make sure you have writing on the other side that's not upside down. So anyway, give me one of your answers. How do you describe a leader?
Someone who has a plan.
All right. Someone who has a plan. I like that. Give me another one. You said approachable? Yeah. I just had this discussion, you know. I had 2 elders that I worked with when I was full-time in Briar. We appointed another one, so we had 3. But the thing is they weren't approachable. They would get up and tell the congregation, if you like what's going on here, tell others. If you don't like what's going on, tell us. And I'm like, they're not going to tell you. They don't want to tell you because you're not approachable. Because their philosophy was, if you came in and wanted to talk about anything and say, man, we need to do this, they'd be like, are you going to run it? And they're like, no. And so people quit coming to them with ideas. Because not everybody who has a great idea is the person who needs to lead that great idea either. But being approachable, man, that's a big one. Yeah. Give me another one. What you got here? Are you trying to sneak in 2 for 1? Oh, I got it. It's just that I told them, I said, we're going to do 1 per table. So they're giving me 2 for 1s. I know why they go together. I mean, certainly you need conviction, but you need to be convinced of your conviction. So they're kind of the same word. So I get it. Yeah, just this once. Convicted and convinced. You know, without conviction, and I say this with as sincere heart as I know, I really have to challenge my conviction. Am I really convicted? Do I really believe this? And I'll tell you a story that has really challenged me. And I don't know if it's a true story or not. I read it years ago in a book of illustrations that I just thought it was such a powerful thing. It's a story about a missionary who became a POW in a Russian war camp. And the missionary was trying to teach the prison guard the Bible. And so they kept talking about Christianity and going back and forth. Finally came the day that he was going to ask for this guy to make a decision. And he was shocked when his guard said to him, "If I believed what you believe, I would crawl across this country on my hands and knees on broken glass to tell someone else. Christianity means something to you, but communism means everything to me." And I have never forgotten that story. And I thought, you know, if we are convicted of something, what are we willing to do for others to know about it? And I say that not to challenge you, because I say it to challenge me. Because I really wrestle with, okay, do I really believe this? And if I do, then how's that going to change the way I live? Is it going to change the way I treat my wife? Is it going to change the way I treat my kids? Does it change the way I treat my grandkids? Does it change the way I work, my work ethic? Does it change talking to others about Jesus? I mean, how does it change me with that conviction? So that's big. Yeah, leaders need conviction and being convinced of that. Give me one that y'all have back here. You got 10, I know. Pick one. Are you trying to do 2 for 1 again?
Yeah, well, I gotta keep up. I'm not gonna
You know what's happening is you're setting a trend, you two. You two tables, you're setting a trend for everybody else. Now everybody's going to want 2 for 1. Caring and compassion do go together. Being compassionate. You know, I like the word compassionate. And it's interesting to me, I've done vision workshops with congregations that became a part of their vision. They wanted to be more compassionate as people to their community. And I'm telling you, people need to see compassion. They get plenty of the other stuff. And isn't that what Jesus taught us to be, is compassionate? Jesus was compassionate. Give me another one on your list here.
You skipped them.
No, you started.
Oh, I started.
Yeah. I have a method to my
Having
madness.
a vision.
A vision. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, a leader needs to be somebody with a vision. If a leader doesn't have a vision of where they're trying to lead people, then where are they leading them? Well, I'll tell you how I describe the difference. Yeah. Well, when I do a vision workshop, I explain that the way I define vision, mission, and planning. And the way that I describe it is a vision is descriptive of who you want to be in the future that you're not now. Mission is what you will do to achieve that. And the planning is how. It's the details that describe, it's the map, if you will, that takes you from where you are to that vision. That's the way I describe the difference in them. And I mean, they're connected, obviously, because you can't really have one without the other. I mean, if you don't have a vision, why do you have a plan?
Right. Well, I was going to say goals. Same thing.
Goals, yeah. Goals kind of fit into that same equation. So good question, good thought. Give me another one on your list. A servant's heart. Woo. I'm going to spend some time talking about that one more here in just a few minutes. So give me another one on your list here.
Sacrificial love.
Sac- Are you still trying to do the 2 for 1? Or you subtitles. I like that. That's good. Here's our heading and here's our subtitle. Yeah. Kind of a sacrificial heart. You said parental, kind of a
Parental heart.
yeah, parental heart. Yeah, because it's for sure. Oh boy, folks, we're going to have to get some water in the baptistry. You can't baptize people if you don't have water in the baptistry. I'm sorry to chase a squirrel, but I looked back there and I thought there's no water in the baptistry. Yeah, you can't convert people if you don't have water in the baptistry. But yeah, parental heart. You know, I tell people I learned what love means from my wife. Watching her with our children showed me what love is. And she continues to demonstrate that and shows me today really what love means and how love is played out by her example. And I think it's that parental part. Maybe it's motherhood. I don't know. It's a combination of all those things. But she really, I've seen her, and the sacrificial part is what really demonstrates that. That's kind of what love is. Love is not so much what you give, it's what you give up. And that's kind of the way that sacrificial heart is demonstrated. So, yeah, good thought. Give me one more on your list of 10.
Accepting accountability.
Ooh, man. That one's challenging. I tell you, I've worked with a lot of congregations. And the funny thing about working with congregations is you learn a lot from different places about things that are going on, things that aren't going on. And I worked with this one congregation that these elders were telling me they were having a problem because one of the deacons wasn't deaconing. I mean, he wasn't doing what they asked him to do. And my first question, I just kind of blurted it out. I'm like, why is he still a deacon? That didn't make sense to me. That if you have somebody that's not doing their job, why are they still a deacon? Well, in the course of the conversation, they were afraid that if they held him accountable, if they called him to question on it, that he would leave and his family would leave and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, when are we going to stop this? You know, we have done this so long in the church that we're so afraid that if we say something to somebody, they're going to leave. That, I mean, it's like, so we don't ever hold anybody accountable? How does that work? I had a group of elders that I was working with one night, and one of them asked me, what do you do with a lame duck elder? I said, well, first of all, you're going to have to explain that to me. What do you mean a lame duck elder? I never heard of that before. He said, well, we've got an elder, and he's not here tonight with our meeting. And I'm like, okay. And they said, well, he only shows up on Sunday morning right before class begins, and he leaves as soon as the amen is said, and he's not here on Sunday night, and went through this stuff. And again, I'm like, why is he an elder? Didn't make sense to me. But it was one of those things, they were afraid to hold him accountable. And my thing is this. If we can't hold somebody accountable, then they shouldn't be in a situation of leadership. But if you're going to be a leader, you're going to need to be held accountable. That's what it's all about. What was you going to say?
I was a deacon for a good while, and he made a decision that the elders didn't agree with. And I don't blame him for disagreeing with it. It was a personal decision that he had done, and they found out about it, and they said he needed to step down. And I was like, okay, I understand that. You know, it's unfortunate. They should have probably just talked to him and said, you know, you need to stop doing whatever that is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it'll be okay. But they asked him to step down, and he did. And we didn't leave the congregation.
Yeah.
Because we understood. And that's a part of accountability. Is
Yeah.
that you do need to accept your own responsibility.
Yes.
In that role.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was unfortunate it happened. It was unfortunate that if we had made the decision together, it wasn't just him.
Sure.
But we had made the decision together, and we were thinking we were doing the best thing for our family.
Yeah.
You know, basically. And they just said that's not a good example. So I said, you know, okay, I get that. And he hasn't served in any role since then. I think we could have.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
for our actions, for our decisions, because God holds us accountable. And when we're not seeing it ourselves, how do we want our brother to help?
That's right. And I was just about to say that's why that the whole structure of church discipline was set up in the beginning, is so that we would have a way to hold each other accountable. I mean, if your brother sins against you, then go to him and talk to him. And I'm glad you said what you did, because the first example that I used of the elders who had a deacon who wasn't doing anything, after 6 months, it took them 6 months before they finally sat down with him and said, this is not really working, and maybe this is just not the role for you. And he went, oh, I'm so glad. He was afraid because he didn't want to do it. I'm like, here both sides have been just menacing over this whole thing for 6 months. And if you'd have just sat down and had a conversation with him, could have resolved it. So, it's just fascinating. But accountability, especially if you're in a leadership role, there's going to be accountability. There needs to be. But there needs to be accountability for everybody. I mean, we all know that we're going to stand before the throne of Christ one day, and we're going to give an account of what we've done in the flesh, good or bad. And doesn't it make sense that we would love one another enough to know that if we have kind of strayed away from where we need to be, that our brothers and sisters would say, hey, just have a conversation. Something not right here. We need to get you back on track.
Are you thinking that there should be term-limited leadership?
This is not a democracy in the church. This is not a voting system in the church. Now, does that mean that there comes a time when a person reaches a point that they don't serve anymore? I know some congregations that have term limits, if you will. An elder's going to serve for 2 years or 3 years, or a deacon's going to serve for 2 or 3 years. And what they do, and the reason they set it up the way that they did, is because they want to give somebody an opportunity that if they don't want to do that role anymore, then they can step out of that role with no harm, no foul kind of thing. And
Not only that, you give a person who is kind of on the fence, they're willing to do it, to try it out for a couple of years to see how they do.
yeah,
So otherwise, they may not step out.
yeah, yeah.
We attended a church, though, that there was an older gentleman in the church that was an elder at some point, and whatever happened, by the time we got there, he no longer was, and he did very little, was very inconsistent and all that, and he was like, oh, I served my time.
Yeah.
So I think that, the roles in which you serve may change, but are any of us ever done serving?
No. Yeah.
So.
Great thought.
It's not the title.
Well, and the thing is, in this country, in our culture, we have this thing about titles. And so I even heard a guy say one time that he believed there was this hierarchy in the church. We had Christ, you had elders, you had deacons, you had ministers, and then you had the body. And I'm like, I don't know what planet he fell off of, but that's not biblical. When you look at the Bible, you have Christ and you have the body. Within the body, you have people who fulfill different roles. I don't like to use the term title. They have a role. They're serving as a shepherd, or they're serving as a deacon, or they're serving as a minister, or they're serving, all of us are ministers. We don't have a title as a paid minister, if you will, but we're all ministering. We're serving one another. And so that's what the body does. Now, there are specific roles that we find within the church. But, do I agree with or disagree with term limits? I don't know. I just don't like that phrase, that terminology, a term limit. It just sounds too political, and I'm not a politics kind of guy. I hate it, actually. And so it's just hard for me when we start using political terminology in a church setting. There are term limits. And if we could call it something else, I might like it better. But is it a way for us to say, okay, what we'd like for you to do is step into this role for a couple of years and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then no harm, no foul. You can step out of that. Or maybe you try it for a year, and it may not be necessarily that you want to do this, but there may be a different area. I really struggle with this idea of trying to find a deacon or somebody to fulfill a specific thing that they're not passionate about. The example I always use is one, I was working with a congregation in Louisiana. They had a deacon that what he did for a living was he is a loan officer at the bank. He was a financial guru. And what did they do? They put him over education. I'm like, how stupid can you be? Well, it's because the elders weren't going to turn the money over to anybody else. And I'm like, that again, how stupid can you be? Here you got a guy, that's what he does for a living. He knows it. He's good at it. You put him over education. He didn't know the first thing about education. He didn't have a clue where to even order curriculum. How do you think the education department fared under his time as a deacon over education? Poorly. Because he had nothing, he didn't want to do anything with it. He basically turned it over to his mom. I'm like, that doesn't work. Why don't we find what people are passionate about and put them over that? Doesn't that make sense? I don't know. I'm kind of simple-minded about that kind of stuff, but you wouldn't want to put me over the teen class. That's not going to be the class you want me to teach. That's just not what I'm passionate about. It's not that I don't love kids. It's just hard for me. It's just not my thing. And so you got to be able to do that and then hold people accountable for what they say they're willing to do. Trails in that time. So where'd we get to? Y'all were accountability, right? So we're back here. What else you got on your list?
A good listener.
A good listener. We talked about that last night. And we're going to talk about that more here shortly. But yeah, a good listener. Best part of communication is listening. Slow to answer? Okay. At first I thought my hearing was off, and I thought you said slow to anger, which is a biblical concept. But slow to answer, I like that even more. Because, and I'll tell you, this is bad. This is bad for me. Because when people say, what do you think about this? Well, I'm quick to tell you what I think about it. Maybe I should stop and think for a moment. You know, the old saying is stop and think for 10 seconds. You know, pause for 10 seconds and then answer. Think about it. Give the person, give an opportunity to really think about it. Slow to answer. That's good. I like that. Give me another one. Willing. Oh, willing to lead, okay. Yeah, it'd be hard to put two ideas are different than more words in a phrase. Yeah, willing to lead. You know, and I know there are times where I have seen somebody put into a position of leadership and they didn't want to lead. I mean, we all have, I think. And that's just not a good situation. You want to put people in who are willing to lead. That makes a good leader. Give me another one. Anything we don't have?
There's so many I want to end to, but all right. How about able to teach with patience?
Teach with patience. I don't know if always... I'm not sure. Did you come up with that for me? I know, right? Teaching with patience. Yeah. You know, as a parent especially, this one's tough. You know, I'm trying to teach my kids something, and either one, they don't want to learn it, or they don't care to learn it. You know, it can be hard sometimes. Teaching with patience. Give me another one. You're doing great.
Got to see what we haven't covered.
Well, if you'd have gone down the list from the top to the bottom, that'd have been easy.
Well, but I've been adding stuff.
Oh, I see. I got you. You're good.
Having a good presence or conduct.
Ah.
When I approach you.
We've got approachable here, but
That's a good word for that.
I like the good presence. No, hold it back, Steve. Hold it back. I told him when you use words that the teacher has to go to the dictionary for, you probably don't need to use that word. A good presence. And I like the fact that you talked about conduct, you know, the person's conduct. Now, there are two things about presence. A leader needs to be somebody who is present, who's there in the moment, that they're there when they need to be there kind of thing. But I like this idea of conduct. You know, they have this good conduct in their presence. In the book of 1 Peter chapter 2, there's a verse, verse 12, that talks about this idea of keep your behavior, your conduct excellent. And the idea is that if you keep your behavior excellent among the world, that the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may on account of your good behavior, your conduct, as they observe it, glorify God in the day of visitation. Now, I was studying that section of Scripture. I was teaching a class one time on it, and I came across this idea that I thought was so cool. Because that phrase, keep your behavior excellent, is a phrase that has to do with conduct that contributes to salvation. Now that kind of gives a whole different thought, doesn't it? To the idea of our presence in the world around us. We need to have the type of conduct that contributes to the salvation of others. If not, we're the ones who need to make changes. Conduct that contributes to the salvation of others. Good presence. I like it. And what was the word? Comportment. I wouldn't even know how to spell that. With a C. I love it. That's great.
Now, do you see why I didn't write it down?
I know, right? Well, you started to, and I was like, please don't write that down. I'll never know how to spell it, let alone define it. Give me another one. Self-aware. You know, it's the number one block in emotional intelligence. I tell you, one of my favorite subjects that I've studied in recent years is this idea of emotional intelligence. And the very first block of emotional intelligence involves self-awareness. I mean, and it's not just self-awareness of, am I aware of my emotions? It's the type of awareness that says, not only do I know what I'm experiencing, that I'm feeling, my emotions, but I'm aware of how those emotions are affecting other people around me. Because without that type of self-awareness, we become very destructive. And so we've got to be very self-aware. Self-aware of our presence, our conduct, our emotions, how those things are impacting the people around us. Very good. Give me another one.
Is there a way of finding out if you're self-aware by seeing the reaction of others? I mean, you can't inherently, you can't say that you're self-aware, right? Because everybody's self-aware in their own mind.
Well, of their own emotions, yeah. The challenge is, and the way to do it is just what you said. How do people respond to me? Or I can ask my wife, how do you see people responding to me? And so I ask people around me that know me, help me so that I become more aware of how my emotions are impacting other people. You know, there have been times my wife would, I would do something with the kids, you know, disciplining the kids, or I would tell them they couldn't do something that, and then she would pull me aside and she'd say, have you forgotten what it was like to be 17? I'm like, yeah. Yes, I have. I've completely forgotten what it was like now that I'm 40. I don't remember 17. But she was my sounding board. She was the one that helped me to be self-aware of how how I was acting and how that was impacting others, especially our kids. And so always rely upon others, and be observant is a great part of that too, being aware of how other people respond to us. So yeah, it's good. I think we're here. Got another one on your list? Really? Even keeled? Keeled? I'm not good at spelling. And that's one of those things. What do you mean by that? Consistent. Even keeled, being consistent. You just didn't want to give me 2 words because you was... Being consistent.
But even feel to me means more than just being consistent. That means you're, you know, it's like in a rough sea, you're even keel.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
smooth or, yeah.
What was the word you used?
Emotionally stable.
Yes, yes, okay. Yeah.
Well, I think
Consistency is part of that, but do what?
the reason I put even keeled is that you can deal with stuff even if it comes up and down. It's not like unemotional.
Yeah.
It just means that there's an integrity to the actions.
Yeah.
There's that I'm consistent. It's not erratic.
Yeah.
There's no
Oh, good.
outbursts or depravity kind of a thing. You ride the emotional fluidity, but you're consistent, you're integrative.
Yeah. So it's okay to have the emotions, but it's how we handle and respond to those emotions in those times of intensity. Very good. Like that. Boy, that's a great quality for a leader. Give me another one back here. Communicates well. Yeah. We're going to spend more time on this communication piece later, so I won't deal with it now. You have that one. You have anything else we don't have?
I think that's all that I
Okay.
had.
All right. You have anything we don't have on our list? Pretty much everything covered? Y'all have anything we don't have? Shepherd's love for the sheep. What were you saying here? Yeah, we have that up here. A shepherd's love for sheep. What do you have up here? What do you have that we don't have up here?
Okay, let's see. Gives responsibility with corresponding authority.
Say it again.
Gives responsibility with corresponding authority. You can't have responsibility without authority.
Well, and I'm glad you said it that way, because I had a gentleman tell me one time, don't give somebody the responsibility unless you're willing to give them the authority to carry out the responsibility. Because what happens is if you give somebody responsibility and you micromanage them to the point they can't make a decision without running through you, then you don't really trust them. And so, yeah, very good. What else?
Okay, we had discerning,
Okay.
non-judgmental. We had knowledgeable of the subject matter, but also how to apply that knowledge. Knowledgeable and ability to apply.
Okay.
Did I have discerning?
Yeah.
I did discerning. Did I say understanding?
Okay.
And we said, how about confident?
We have that. I guess I used convinced. We'll put confident.
Okay, we had proactive, or, where you have vision, Kathy was saying, you have vision without plan, without action.
Yeah. You got one more shot here and then the board's full.
Let's see. I think we got everything well.
Okay.
Yep, got them all.
Cool. That's a lot, isn't it? I mean, and here's the reason I do this, is because when you think about a leader, you got people who are thinking all of these things. And can you think of one person who has all of those things? Makes it kind of challenging. And so when you start looking around a congregation for somebody who may serve as a deacon or an elder or in some other capacity, it's very challenging because you got people who are thinking all these different types of thoughts about a leader. Now, from a biblical perspective, there are a lot of passages that we could look at, but Esther is one of those books that has the epitome of both good and bad leadership. You know how the story starts? You got Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, king over the known world at the time. And he has all of his commanders, princes, all the leaders of his armies, all come together. And the text says that he showed them the wealth of his kingdom. It took him 180 days. I don't know if you've ever noticed that fact or not. That's 6 months. It took him 6 months to show off the wealth of his kingdom. it would take you less than 6 seconds to see mine. 6 months to show the wealth of his kingdom. Then he has this big party, big feast. And what happens is, it says that they were drinking wine. The wine flowed freely, the New American Standard says. I don't know exactly what that means, but I got a pretty good idea. The wine flowed freely, but it also says that it flowed they were drinking wine according to the customs of the Persians. Don't know what that means either, but I got a pretty good idea that they were drinking pretty heavily. At the end of this week-long party, the king decides he wants to call Queen Vashti in to show her off. Now, I don't know what Queen Vashti was thinking, but I have a pretty good idea that in her mind, she was thinking, there is no way you're going to parade me in front of a bunch of drunken heathen fools. And so she refused to go. Now, you don't refuse the king. That's a big no-no. And so there's this big conflict. What do we do now? Well, when you have a problem, it's what we do in the church today. You appoint a committee to figure out how to handle it. That's what he did. He appointed a committee of men who knew the culture and the customs of the time. And they decided that if we don't do something about this, then all of the women in the kingdom will stand in contempt of their husbands, and we can't have that. So they decided to put Queen Vashti away. And so they did. Now, you can't have a king without a queen. So the search began for a new queen. And this is where we're introduced to a couple of new people into this story, and that's Mordecai and Esther. And you'll remember how that all goes. Now, this is kind of a cool part for you ladies, because in order to go into the presence of the king, it was a year-long spa treatment. Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, a year-long, perfumes and the oils and all the stuff, the massages. I mean, everything to make sure you looked perfect when you walked into the king's presence. A year. Esther walks in, and the king, she found favor in the king's eyes, and wham! Here she is, the next queen of Persia. It's about this time we learn about Mordecai getting word that there are a couple of men who are planning an assassination attempt. Well, he tells Esther, and Esther tells the king. And the king investigates and finds out to be true, and so he puts those two men to death. And it tells us here that all of this was written in the books of the Chronicles of the Kings. Now, that's an important piece here in just a moment. Because after all this, we're then introduced to another key part of this story, and that is a man by the name of Haman. Now, Haman was the epitome of how not to be a leader. I mean, he had to have been the greatest narcissist that we read about in the Old Testament. I mean, Haman was the guy who loved to walk through the streets and have everybody bow to him. And everybody did, except one. Mordecai. Mordecai would not bow to this narcissist. And it made Haman mad. I mean, so mad that he builds a gallows 75 feet high to hang him on it. Do you think he was trying to communicate anything to the people in the nation? When you don't bow to me, look what happens. So he is preparing to go in to ask the king for permission to hang Haman, or to hang Mordecai. Now, you know, it's just fascinating to me the way God works through all these things. It just so happened that the night before Haman comes into the king, that king couldn't sleep. So what do you do when you can't sleep? Well, you have somebody read to you from the books of the Chronicles of the Kings. And guess what? That guy just happened to be reading that section about Mordecai, informing in regards to those two assassins. King wants to know what was done for Mordecai. Well, nothing. So he's contemplating. Enter Haman. Haman walks in, and the king's like, "Hey, Haman, come here." He said, "What should the king do for someone he wants to honor?" Now, this gives you a glimpse into Haman's personality. Haman's thinking, who would the king want to honor more than me? He says, I tell you what I'd do. I'd put a royal robe on him and a crown, and I'd set him on the king's royal horse, have somebody lead him through the streets of the city saying, this is what the king does to someone he wants to honor. Now, there are a couple of times in history I'd love to have gone back and seen the look on somebody's face. And this is one of them. Can you imagine the look on Haman's face when the king said, great, do that for Mordecai? Can you see the look on Haman's face as he's leading that horse? This is what the king does for one he wants to honor. I mean, hatred boiled to the point that now it's not about killing one man, it's about killing an entire nation of people. And of course, this is where Mordecai finds out about Haman's plan. And so he informs Esther that she needs to go into the king and stop this thing. And Esther's like, I haven't been invited. And to go into the king's presence uninvited, unless he extended his scepter to you, it was a death sentence. And so Mordecai's like, look, deliverance will come, whether from you or from someone else. And don't think that you or your family will escape. But who knows but what you've been appointed for such a time as this. So they fast, they pray. Esther goes in. King extends the scepter. And he's like, what would you request? She's like, I want you to come to a banquet tomorrow night and bring Haman. Now, on one hand, how do you get to a man's heart? Food. I saw y'all putting food in the fridge earlier. I'm already looking forward to lunch. You go through his stomach. That's the thing. But here's the funny part, because Haman's like, the queen invited me. I mean, he's excited that he was invited to this banquet. And so they go, they eat, and the king's like, what is your request? She's like, come back tomorrow night. I'm going to feed you again. So she brings him back the next night, and she reveals Haman's wicked, evil plot, and the king is angry, and he leaves the room, and Haman's in fear for his life, and so he falls down on the couch there pleading for his life, and the king walks in. He's like, what would you do, assault my wife in front of me? And immediately the guards take him out, and the irony of it all is they hang him on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. Now, here's the part. You see, the thing is, the king now is going to appoint Mordecai in that position. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, what does this have to do with leader, being a leader or describing a leader? Well, the very last verse of the book of Esther, in Esther chapter 10, verse 3, it says this about Mordecai. He worked for the good of the people, and he spoke up for their welfare. That is a leader. Now, you probably can encompass all of these things within that, but the bottom line is that if you're looking for somebody who is going to be a good leader, you look for someone who doesn't have a self-driven agenda. He works for the good of the people, and he speaks up for their welfare. He's an advocate for the people. I love the way John Maxwell, I just heard this not 2 months ago maybe, and as soon as I heard it, I thought, I've got to incorporate this in my material. And John Maxwell said this: a leader is someone who is going to want more for the people than from them. I think that's a powerful thought. He wants more for the people than he wants from them. So when we think about this idea of leader, I'd like for you to think for just a moment. If you had never seen church leadership as it is today, if you had never seen leaders, elders function as they do today in the church, just based on what you find in the New Testament, how would you describe what leadership looks like based on the Bible? When you look at shepherds in the New Testament, how would you describe them? Don't think about what you see today, just what you find in the Bible. How would you describe shepherds? in the New Testament? Caring. And why would you say that?
Because they're thinking of them and what he can do for them, how he can handle them.
Okay.
You know, for their good.
Servants. Okay. Prayerful.
Interconnected, so they know each other.
Okay.
Great distances, they know each other.
Yeah. Interconnected. There's connection between them as shepherds, but as well the people.
I think of them as chief older,
Okay.
what was happening in and what can happen.
Ah, yeah. Acts 20 deals with that. Yeah, they're watching over, from things that can happen from within, things that happen from without. Molded. Yeah, they were molded and shaped by the apostles' teaching. Aware. I'm trying to think of where we would find that in the New Testament, where they made mistakes. Ah, okay. Very good, very good. Very good, yep. I didn't think of that. I didn't think of him as being an elder until, he is, obviously, because of what we find in 1 Peter 5. But
Then he, obviously you see later, he took the input from Paul.
yeah,
Paul counted him.
held him accountable. Yeah, very good. Hospitable. Yeah, we know they were hospitable.
Have the greater good in heart.
Yeah, having the greater good at heart for the people. It's interesting to think about the idea of shepherds and shepherding and all that goes along with that. A colleague of mine and I have been discussing, he's very passionate about trying to help congregations in an area of shepherds. And what's driving him and his passion about this is he's trying to help congregations, especially elders, not function as a board that simply makes decisions for the church, but rather to understand what their particular role is from a biblical concept. So when you think about this idea of, okay, it's hard for us to stop and not think in terms of how we see the church functioning today. It's the model that we've seen and experienced all our life. And so now we're trying to think, okay, let's go back to what the Bible says and think in terms of how the Bible describes the role and responsibility of those who served as shepherds. Now, we're going to talk more about this as we kind of go through this idea. I really wish we could spend more time on this, but why do you think it is there are not more people who lead in the church? If you were going to just make a list, does this thing just flip easily? I can just erase it, doesn't matter. It's risky. It is risky. You put yourself out there if you're going to be a leader. Your life kind of becomes under a microscope where you're examined. And so it's very risky. Time consuming. Fear of failure. Yep. It cracks me up that we live in a society that is so afraid to fail. And yet, we should almost seek failure. Because it's in failure that we learn the most. Anyway. Huh? Oh, yeah. But if we were seeking failure, it would be a different mindset. Because we'd be seeking it for the purpose of learning from it. But we teach our kids and we really try to prepare them not to fail. And then what happens is when they they will at some point, when they fail, it becomes devastating to them. Angela Duckworth grew up in a home to where her dad never wanted to hear what they did during the day that was successful. He always asked them about where they failed, because he would always ask them, what did you learn from it? And so she was always encouraged to fail so that she would benefit from what she learned from that experience. Can you imagine that mindset? And how different that would be than trying to protect them from ever failing? And she's one of the most successful professors in Ivy League college universities that teaches today. She's amazing.
One of the things I did with my son early on, he was into the computer song, and we had a conversation before he wanted to do something. He said, what's the worst thing that can happen? He said, turn the computer on, turn it back on, you try again. Then he said, later we got a computer, he said, hey, Dad, I'd like to put a computer chip in. We can replace the main processor. Let's get it. Here's the book. Figure it out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, what do we do? We'll take it out, we'll go back in. So from those experiences, we did many others like that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, oh, he's now a computer engineer. What was I thinking?
I don't know, but you know, the thing is that opportunity to experience failure is a huge thing. Anyway, what else? What keeps men from leading?
It's part of the risky, but it's sometimes you're the arrows that get shot at you. You're, I don't know what you want to call that. Pardon? No, not gunshot. You're the target or whatever. What people say is
They don't want to be the target. I don't want to be the one they're shooting at from both sides. You know, the enemy's shooting at us and the church is shooting at us. So, yeah.
Well, Harry Truman was famous for having the little plaque on his desk, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to be in that position of making a tough
And I think a part of the reason that goes along with that as to why there are people who don't want to be in leadership roles is not just that they don't want to make tough decisions, it's that the role is seen as that. Especially when we're talking about shepherds. The role is seen as I've got to make all these decisions and I don't want to be responsible for those decisions. But if we understood the role of a shepherd a little differently, and we taught it differently, I wonder if that might change. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in just a second. I think you had your hand up, did you?
The inability to think ahead.
Okay. Anything else you can think of? The Lord's calling.
Yes, that's exactly what I just said, Jim.
What was you saying?
Lack of confidence.
Lack of confidence? It's kind of that Moses syndrome.
Yes,
Who am I, Lord?
yes.
Ah, yes. A lot of work. Yeah. Being a leader is a lot of work.
I think just impatience.
Okay? It is a slow process. It's a lifelong process.
Are you supposed to want the position?
You should. You know, that's kind of a funny thing. It's a fine line.
But doesn't it say that?
Well,
You should want the position.
here's the thing. You know, the desire,
Yes.
the one who aspires to the office or the work of a shepherd. Here's the funny thing about that, because I know, here's where I started my thinking differently about that. As there was a guy that in a congregation that he wanted to be an elder. I mean, he refused to be a deacon. He said, I want to be an elder. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want you to be one. And he has divided that congregation because of that arrogant mindset.
Strongly.
I know. But see, that's what made me start thinking
I got it.
about this idea of aspiring.
Yeah.
I think the idea is not that they aspire to be a shepherd. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to take on that kind of responsibility in the sense of that. But I think there is this desire to want to do what God wants and needs in His church, and that they're willing to take on that role because of that need. And I don't know, and like I said, it's a semantic thing, and maybe it's just a fine line there. But that one individual changed the way I think about that whole process, because I think that what he did and what he said was just wrong. Anyway, both of y'all, all three of you got your hands up. I don't care who goes first.
The magnitude of the responsibility. All of a sudden you say, I will judge your son because of the responsibility I have to schools, others, that I am, supposed to protect, to nourish, to admonish, all of that. That level of responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
Mine runs along the same lines, commitment. We have to commit our lives to become a Christian. Once we decide we are going to go in that watery grave baptism, we are committed. But do we keep that commitment? Not always. Sometimes we fall right back to our old ways, and I don't want to commit to yet another thing, because I know it's going to consume my life.
Yeah.
And I think commitment is huge.
You know, it's funny, I work with congregations and we talk about some of their needs, and they're always trying to find teachers. I said, the problem is that when you ask a congregation, anybody be willing to teach, nobody volunteers, because they know that if they say yes, they're committing to do so until Jesus comes back or until they die. And nobody wants to give that, It's kind of like that old story about, we need to contribute to the farmer's breakfast as the pig and the chicken are having this discussion. And he's like, the pig's like, for you, you're giving something, but for me, it's a whole commitment. He's given his whole life for the farmer's breakfast. But anyway, what'd you start saying?
Question is, why do more not lead? And to me, it's because there's a lack of discipleship.
A lack of discipleship.
They're not leaders because we're not discipling people to lead.
Yeah.
I think there's also a lack of value. A lack of value, maybe in both, like in themselves and in the group.
Yeah.
Which is-
Yeah. Very good.
So it kind of goes along with the lack of confidence, but the other part is, the question we brought up earlier, am I approachable enough? Am I caring enough? Do I have,
So they doubt.
yeah, doubt, self-doubt?
I'm surprised someone didn't say lack of knowledge, because that tends to be one that comes up quite a bit. It's lack of knowledge. The real point for me here as we think about this is, how do we overcome these challenges? So I want to take not near as much time as I wanted to. I want us to talk about these challenges for just a few moments, and how do we overcome these? And I know we could make another list just as long as this, as to reasons that people give as to why they don't want to lead. But I think the challenge is, how do we overcome it? And I think number one is we've got to have a vision for it. If we don't have a vision for developing leaders, and a book that I would recommend to you is called Designed to Lead by Eric Geiger and Kevin Peck. Their premise is that the church was designed by God to produce leaders. Leaders in the home, leaders in the world, leaders in the church. Pretty simple. And, the thing is if we don't have that conviction that our whole purpose, our design was to develop people to be leaders for God, then what happens is we just mess around doing a bunch of other stuff. But then when we have that conviction, we have to create a culture for which it exists, which means we have to have a vision for those kinds of things. If we don't have a vision for the church being that center for developing people to be leaders in their home, in the world, and in the church, then we're going to just really do a bunch of trivial other things, or peripheral things, if you will, that don't really contribute to that. Number two is they're going to have to embrace change. Now, I mentioned this last night about change. Change is one of those words that we just don't like. And I get it. I'm a routine kind of guy. I usually get up about the same time every day. I go to bed same time every night. For the most part, I try to have the same routine every day. And it works for me. And, and it's funny how 1 hour time change can make such a big difference. You go east, you go west, or it's a spring or it's the fall. I mean, that hour time change makes a huge difference. Sleep patterns get interrupted, and instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, it feels like midnight. And so it's just different. But in the church, we're very resistant to change. And it's funny because we talk about change almost weekly. We just use a different word. Know what it is? Say it again. Repent. Repent. I'm like, do we know what that word means? What's that old Princess Bride thing? You keep using that word. I'm not sure you know what it means. I think it means what you think it does. But the idea of repent means to change. But the funny thing is I don't use that word in my everyday language. I've never said to my wife, I was thinking about going to Nashville, but I repented. Nobody talks that way. We say, I changed my mind. But the thing is, in the church, it's like it's okay to say repent because it doesn't have the same meaning to us. We don't understand the type of change that it involves. So it's easy to say repent because we think, well, I already did that before I became a Christian. It's like, you just kind of missed the whole concept. But the idea of change, and there are really two types of change that take place. There's forced change and there's initiated change. Forced change takes place when people aren't expecting it. They're not prepared for it. And, a couple of examples. I think the main one is COVID-19. 2020, nobody expected that. Nobody was prepared for it. A tiny little virus that you could only see under a microscope that changed our entire world. Changed the way we worshiped. Y'all still use those hourglass things? Yeah. No? Oh, thank you. You still use them? Yeah. You can't convince me that those little discs were unleavened bread. There's just no way. Thank you, Kathy, for making the bread. Who's Kathy? Oh, thank you. That's right, you. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to that. Yeah, the thing is, it changed the way we did that for a long time. We had these little self-contained things that had a styrofoam disc that was horrible. And then we might as well have been drinking wine because that was alcoholic content on the other side of that hourglass. And so those things were horrible. But it changed that, changed the way we gave. Changed the way we sit. Got to sit 6 feet apart. I remember going to congregations where they had tape between pews that you couldn't sit in this because you had to sit 6 feet apart. I mean, all that kind of stuff. It changed all of that. Changed the way we ate out. Changed the way we shopped. I remember distinctly that they would only let so many people in Sam's to buy toilet paper at a time. A necessity, that's right. An essential, as they called it. Right. I was still trying to figure out how liquor stores were essential, but they kept them open. Yeah. I'm like, I guess if you're going to stay home all the time, you might as well be drunk, right? I don't know. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, that change was forced on us. We didn't like it. We weren't expecting it. And sometimes we do things in the church that comes across as forced change. And the way we do that is because we announce it from the pulpit, which is the total wrong way to try to bring about change in the church. We get up and we announce, next week we're going to stop doing this, or we're going to start doing this. And people are like, who made that decision? When are they going to do that? Why are they doing that? And why are they doing it now? All these questions. And it's like, that's forcing change on people. Initiated change is different because initiated change is where people are prepared. They're expecting the change. And you want to know the one word that makes the difference between forced change and initiated change? Well, openness is a part of it, but it's communication. It's how we communicate the message. Now, I interviewed 6 different military leaders for the last book that I wrote. And the funny thing about every single one of them is one of the questions I asked them was, how do you communicate the mission, and how do you know that they understood the mission that was communicated to them? Every single one of them said the most effective way to communicate is face to face. Don't write it down. Don't send it in an email. Don't text it. Talk to them face to face. And every single one of them said, we have a confirmation brief, which they come back 2 days later and they have to confirm the mission. And it gives us an opportunity to correct it if they misunderstood something. But it's always talking to people face to face, and we don't do that. We take the easy road out, we put it in the bulletin, we send an email, or we announce it from the pulpit. But the only way change is going to be embraced is if you talk to people face to face. Give them a chance to ask questions and answer the questions. And you never know, they may come up with something that you're like, wow, I wished I'd have thought of that before. Would have made this much easier. But you got to do that in order to bring about change.
I like what you're saying, and I know that the older we get and the more set in our ways we get, we go to a congregation and we're like, okay, this is the way I would do things, so I'm going to stay here. And then somebody says, well, we're going to change that. And then we're like, but I came here because I like that.
Yeah.
And they just said, well, we're going to change it anyway. And they didn't ask for input. They didn't ask for anything. They just said, we're going to change. And the change may be very good, but we're not going to see it because all we are is upset because they told us we're changing.
And we feel forced, which is why we get upset.
The older we get,
Why
Yeah.
change, that's the big thing.
That is,
Why
you are
does it
so right.
change?
Have you read my book? No, just kidding. But yeah, why? If we're not able to explain people why we're making this change, we might as well not be making it. Because it's going to create conflict. Great conflict. So we want to, if we're going to address these things, then we're going to have to be able to embrace some change.
When you say face to face, I agree. However, am I going to go to everybody in the congregation?
Yep.
Or are we going to have a congregational
Nope.
meeting where we talk? I'm going to go see each person.
It depends. It depends. It depends on the type of change.
Okay.
There are a lot of times when you have a congregational type meeting, there are some people who will never speak. You're never going to know what they're thinking. You're going to never know what they're going to say to someone else once they leave. But the thing is if I sit down face to face with you, one, it communicates to you that you have value because I want to know your thoughts. I don't want to know everybody's thoughts. I want to know yours. And it gives you an opportunity to ask the questions that you would ask me one-on-one that you wouldn't ever ask in a group setting. And so it takes more time to do that. But if you really want to implement a change, then that's the most effective way to do it. Because it does give everybody an opportunity to contribute.
Does the same person have to see everybody, or could it be?
No. That's the thing. That's the thing about a group of leaders. If you got 3 elders, deacons, minister. And I always recommend that you go as a husband and wife team. Because that way it gives both, if you're seeing a family, it gives both the husband and wife of that family opportunity to talk. And they feel more comfortable if they know the wife is with them. And so it needs to be a husband-wife team that go when you're implementing change. When I do a vision workshop, and I'm assuming that at some point we're going to do that here, hopefully before too long. But if we do that, what I'm going to recommend is that that's what the leaders do. That as a leadership team, then elders, deacons, ministers, that what you do is with your wives, you start going to all the families in the congregation to communicate with them what this new vision is and the process you went through to get their input into it. Because I've seen people that come up with something that nobody thought about, just a phrasing, a word terminology. Changing one word made all the difference in the vision statement. And it's because somebody was an English teacher. And so that English teacher had this great idea. And once she mentioned it, everybody was like, well, yeah, it makes sense now. And so that's why you do that. You go talk to people face to face. It's powerful.
It's almost all talking about, really. I think one of the things that we miss out on in our congregations a lot of the time is encouraging our younger people, not just our children, but the younger parents.
Young families.
Men and women to step up. And that means those of us who are older and are used to doing stuff need to say, okay, I think that you know, we can use a change, I can use a break. Let's let them start taking care of things. And I think we're all resistant to that. Because again, it's that word change. We don't want change.
Yeah.
And we know they're going to change things, but we need to allow that to happen.
Amen.
We need to train the younger people. That's
Yeah.
the purpose.
Well, here's the thing. Either we do that and we learn to help guide that process, or we're going to have to sit back and watch our young people leave and go somewhere else, or they're just waiting until we die and they're going to do it anyway. I mean, doesn't it make sense that we want to try to guide that process and be there to help support with the wisdom that we've learned from our lives and experience, and to say, hey, have you thought about this? And then, but you know, the big challenge that I hear is that people are afraid of what if they make a mistake? I'm like, that's the wrong question. They're going to make a mistake. The question is, what are you going to do when they make the mistake, not if they make it? And so to be there to support them and to guide them and say, hey, okay, it's all right. Let's figure it out. Let's back it up. And let's figure out how to make it work. But yeah, we're going to have to start doing that because they're going to bring about some change. And that's okay. So we just got to figure out, how do we guide that process and how do we do that? Because the only way we're going to overcome some of these challenges like this is we're going to have to embrace it. I think it was Tom Peters who said, we're going to have to learn to love change as much as we have hated it in the past. And I think that's a pretty effective way to say it. So also, we're going to have to understand roles. Now, I'm not going to take the time to do this, but what I am going to do is I'm going to recommend a book to you. I have a copy of it. I'm glad to leave that. If you don't have it already, I'll leave it with Christian and you guys can pass it around. It's called The Way of the Shepherd. It's not a big book. It's written by Kevin Lehman, L-E-M-A-N, and Bill Pentak, P-E-N-T-A-K. These two guys, this is not what, I'm sorry? P as in Paul, Bill Pentak, yeah. This is not a book that was written from the standpoint of, okay, here's a passage of Scripture and this is what we're going to go with. But you can't read this book without realizing, and I'm going to show you the 7 principles that are found in it, without realizing that he got this directly from the 23rd Psalm. But it's a story about a professor and an MBA student who came to him, and he's trying to figure out how can I be successful in this new job he's getting ready to go to. And so the way that he teaches him how to be successful is he teaches him the way of the shepherd. And I mean, it's just beautifully written. It's a narrative. You can read it in just a couple of hours. I mean, it's 110 pages long, and it's just a small book. It's not one of those big, thick books. And so you can read it pretty quick, but it's so powerful. So they talk about 7 principles. Number 1 is you need to know the condition of your flock. The way of the shepherd begins here. You need to know the condition of your flock. Now, the way that he describes in the book is he takes him out to a literal farm that he owns, and he has sheep. And of course, he gets down with each sheep, and he's rubbing their ears and checking, you know, for flies and for different types of insects, and he's rubbing their wool and he's checking them over. He knows the condition of the sheep. And, you know, when you think about shepherding, I can't tell you how many men I know that serve in the role as a shepherd who have absolutely no idea about the condition of the sheep. And the reason is, and Angela used this term earlier about being connected, they're not connected to the sheep. They have really, the model that they've seen is this idea of being a board. They have a room in which they come together and they meet and they make decisions, and they may talk about different things. They may even talk about some things among the sheep, but they really aren't connected to the sheep. Do you know where every person in this flock, do you know where they struggle? Do you know what tempts them? Do you know what challenges they're dealing with in their home, on their jobs? Are you connected to them? Do you know the spiritual condition of your sheep? Do you know if they're strong in the faith? Do you know if they're struggling in their spiritual walk with God? Simply because they come here and they sit every time the doors are open in these chairs does not mean that they're spiritually healthy. Shepherds need to know the condition of their flock. Number 2 is they have to discover the shape of their sheep. Now you can see that the word shape is all capitalized because it's an acronym. And here's what it stands for. The S stands for strengths. Do you know the strengths of each sheep in your congregation? It's hard for you to plan how to get people involved in doing stuff if you don't know what their strong points are, what their weaknesses are. Instead, what we often do is we start saying we need somebody to do this, and we grab somebody that we think could do it, but they have no desire to do it because that's not their strength. They're trained to do something different. They got an education in something that's different. Very few people in congregations were formally trained to be teachers, and yet we're constantly asking people to take the role of being a teacher. And I'm like, no thanks. And we got to stop doing that. Find out what their strengths are and utilize those strengths. The H stands for heart. Do you know the heart of your sheep? Is their heart one that's bitter? Or is their heart one that's better? Do they see the good or do they see the bad in every situation? I always make this joke. Simon Sinek's one of my favorite authors, and I always make the joke about how I'd like to know how you get a job being an optimist. That's his job title. He is an optimist. And of course, I tell my wife, I said, it's probably because I'm such a pessimist that I can't get that job. But, you know, I don't want to, but it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's my age. But I just tend to be very cynical, very jaded about a lot of things when it comes to the church. And so I have to work on that constantly to try to see the good in what's going on and not the bad. But you see, people don't call me generally when things are all good. They call me when things are bad and they need help. And so it's hard for me. So I have to really work on this one. But I can tell you this, there's not one of the shepherds at the congregation where we attend that has a clue about my heart. They've never asked me. They've never talked to me to find out those areas where I'm struggling like that. Do you know the heart of your sheep? The A stands for attitude. Do you know their attitudes? They positive? They negative? What kind of attitude? Are they rebellious? Are they the kind that if you ask them to do something, they're submissive and say yes? You know, if people want to do something that you're suggesting, that's agreement. That's not submission. Submission is what you do when you don't want to go that direction. That's submission. Anything else is just agreement. I agree with you, so let's go that direction. But if I don't necessarily want to go in that direction, I may not agree with that direction, but I'm willing to do that because I'm submissive. That's what submission is all about. Well, do they have a submissive attitude or are they rebellious? I ain't going that direction. I'll go somewhere else. What kind of attitude do they have? The P stands for personality. What kind of personality do they have? Are they happy? Are they sad? Do you know their personality type? I don't know if you do Myers-Briggs or if you have some other kind of personality assessment that you take, but it'd probably be good to find out what people's personalities are in a congregation. It'd be worth paying for the assessment just to find out. It might help you understand how to get along with people differently if you know that they have a certain personality type. DISC, pretty powerful thing. And then experiences. Do you know what experiences they have had in their life? How were they raised? Where did they grow up? I guarantee you, people in New York grew up differently than people in Alabama. I guarantee you. And people on the eastern half of this country, they grew up totally different than people in California. Totally different. And people who grew up in the millennial generation, they grew up different than people in the builder generation or the boomer generation. I'm one of those guys. I was born in 1961, and so I'm kind of at the tail end of the boomers, but I still have that influence, and yet I'm still kind of drawn with the next generation as well. You know, it's just interesting. When you think about what generation was a person born in, that's going to have a big impact on what they experienced growing up. Did they grow up in a fairly affluent, wealthy community, or did they grow up in a very poverty-stricken community? You think that's going to have an impact on the way they see things? Well, of course. And so, do you as a shepherd know the shape of your sheep? Do you know their strengths? Do you know their heart? Do you know their attitude? Do you know their personality? Do you know what experiences they've had in their life that have shaped their perspectives? If we don't know those things, it's going to be very hard to be able to lead them. Number 3. Yes?
What do you do with this information once you have it? I mean, knowing a person is confrontational or have some other non-willing type attitude.
Would you approach them?
Are you trying to mold them yourself? I mean, saying, oh, that's wrong, don't do that.
No. See, the thing is if they're like these personality assessments. There's a lot of things that when you know somebody's personality type, the way that you guide them is going to be different than you guide somebody else. And so there are lots of material that's available to help you understand how to approach that person, the types of questions to ask. There's a book by, I can't remember his first name, last name is Bono. It's not the YouTube Bono, but it's the YouTube Bono. But he wrote a book called The 6 Thinking Hats. And the idea is you have to give people who are confrontational an opportunity to have a voice. But it doesn't always mean that you have to follow what they say. You know, Robert Oglesby had this policy that he called the 2-hour rule. And what he did was he'd give people an opportunity to just, vent. He said about 45 minutes they run out of gas. He said, don't interrupt them. Let them go. Let them go until they completely run out of gas. And then spend about 15 minutes saying, what do I need to do to help make this right? How do we do this to make this work? He said most of the time you'd be surprised that they really don't know how to make it work. But he said you can spend the next hour trying to figure out a solution. But he said if you don't give people that opportunity to vent, if they're confrontational, they want to vent, let them vent. But our problem is once people start that, we kind of bow up a little bit and we're going to get right back in their face. Next thing you know, we're in a fight. But you see, if you know somebody's that way, you handle them differently than if you know somebody is much more passive in nature. And you need to be able to guide that person who's passive to come along, just like you need to lead the guy who's confrontational. So you got to find out what their personalities are so that you learn how. You may not know how right now, but you can learn how to deal with those personality types. And there are a lot of resources out there to help you do that.
Isn't one of the more important things, and I could be wrong about this, but taking people where they're at? In other words, you have to know where they're at, taking into account all the rest of this.
Uh-huh.
But then taking them from where they're at. We cannot go from A to Z, especially if they're starting out at negative Z, because people are sometimes. And you're just going to get them frustrated and upset.
Yeah.
If you try to take them to a certain place where they're not ready for it, you have to take people where they're at. And I don't think I'd be where I am today if people didn't do that with me.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you can minimize, you're not going to eliminate, but you can minimize the confrontation and minimize the resistance when you stop trying to give announcements on change and talk to people face to face first.
Do you think it's a good attitude, a good approach, as you say, to try to find the path where you think you have something in common with them or something? And
Can be that.
build on that and hoping over time?
It depends. It depends on the person, because every person is different. And there's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to every single person. You got to be able, it's kind of like that old proverb that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it. The idea is you train up a child in their way. If you train every single child the same way, you're doing it wrong, because they're all different. And so the idea is you've got to structure the training around that individual to help get them from where they are to where they need to be. And that takes a leader who knows how to do that.
I've been reading a book, and I'm not done with it, but it's called Gardeners, Not Carpenters. It's a parenting book, and it's about how we tend to think that the rightness of the world is by creating carbon copies of affirmation of ourselves.
Yeah.
Whatever our ideal is, whatever our ambition, our priorities. And that's a carpenter that's trying to create exact measurements
Yeah.
of pattern.
Yeah.
Whereas a gardener isn't about being harsh to the plant because of bugs or difficulties, but more or less pulling the good out. And I feel like that pairs, as I'm reading it, I see a lot of parallels in that with like Celebrate Recovery. You don't tag on someone about what they've done wrong. You envision the good you see in them and you pull it out.
Yeah.
They can't get out of a bad habit if they don't have anything good to reach for.
Yeah.
And so envisioning the good out of somebody means that I don't even have to address your issues. I don't really need to announce them. I just need to announce to you the good I see in you.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, because you got to tend the soil. If you're a gardener, the soils are different. So you got to tend the soil to get that soil to where it will produce.
I just wanted to say, using Jesus as the example of what he did with the disciples. You know, in the beginning, they weren't able to go out and, cycle. He had to, train them. It's kind of like the way it's shown in the shows that, each one to kind of...
Because they were all different.
Because they were all different.
Yeah.
But in the end, after the resurrection, they were able to fulfill the role.
Yeah. It's thinking about the chosen, you think about the difference between Peter and Matthew and that whole progression throughout that series. Matthew, you know that the apostles had to think, why is he calling a tax collector? I mean, there's a lot they bring out in the chosen. I wondered if something like that had to have happened at some point, because they hated tax collectors, What did you start saying?
Like I said, in teaching in the different age groups and things like that, I used to teach skiing, and they said, look, children learn by doing. They watch and they learn. If you go to an adult, and then, like you say, the different types. I'm being taught how to ski when I first did it, and the guy says, okay, you just kind of feel it. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to feel it on my heel, and this part of it. He said, what are you, an engineer? I said, yeah. And he said, okay, Doc, follow me. But I wanted to know analytically every little bit so that I could figure it out for myself. Somebody else is a very different style. So
Yeah.
he said, you start by trying to find this is what our objective for today is. Let's go try it, simplify it, break it down, and then at the end, you kind of reinforce what you just did.
Yeah.
So there's but anyway, yeah, they showed, and they say, hey, women, totally different style.
No. Let me laser you here. Slice and dice. Okay, let me get through this here real quick so we can take a break. Yeah, we're about 20 minutes over. Help your sheep identify with you. Here's the thing about shepherding that I think is probably one of the biggest challenges into church today is the sheep really don't know the shepherd. I mean, do they know where you struggle? You see, we create this thing in the church sometimes that once a person reaches the point of being a shepherd, they should never make a mistake. They're like perfect. I mean, after all, we've got this list of qualifications where we're checking the boxes that you've got to be almost perfect, right? To meet all those qualifications. And so really, that's kind of what people think. And so when they see a shepherd make a mistake or not do something correct, then what happens is it just kind of destroys their mindset. But if we let people know who we are, we need to create the kind of environment that sheep can identify with you. Because how else are you going to help prepare them at someday maybe to be a shepherd?
Don't you think sometimes they see you here and they make an assessment of you?
Oh, yeah.
Not really getting to know you. In other words, they see that you do this and this and this. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at that. But do they know the real person? And I'm struggling.
Yeah.
The person is
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it the way you did, because the challenge that I see in the church today is we really confine our ability to know one another to this building. It's our few minutes before the service begins, maybe in between class and worship service, and then a few minutes after as we're going out the door to lunch. And that's kind of how we figure out whether we know somebody or not. And I'm telling you, it ain't working. The idea of knowing the sheep, knowing the condition of your sheep, and helping the sheep identify you is going to have to take place in your home. You're going to have to spend some time together, have them in your home, go in their home. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get to know each other and really know each other. And I think that's what you're talking about. You're also going to have to make your pasture a safe place. If you're going to do the way of the shepherd, you're going to have to make your pasture a safe place. And what I mean by this, and you're going to find this, sheep need to know that where they are, that they are cared for, protected, that it's safe for them. And that means that it's a safe place for them to be able to say whatever it is they want to say, even if it's wrong. Because the only way you know and know how to guide them and to correct things is if you are allowing them to be safe and feel vulnerable and being able to say what's ever on their mind. And I'll guarantee you, there are going to be some folks who say some things, and you're going to be like, where did that come from? But the idea is that you can't do that. You've got to allow it to be a safe space for them. Let me run through the rest of these real quick. The staff of direction, the rod of correction. It's funny, this study, and you'll read this in the book, the staff and the rod were not for beating the sheep up. Providing direction and correction was not about beating the sheep up. And it was really more about guiding them, because sheep have a tendency to only see what's directly in front of them. They can't see what's ahead of them. And so they just kind of wander depending on where they see the grass right in front of them. And sometimes they get off the path. And so you have to use the staff and the rod to bring them back. Or you have to use it to correct them, to make sure that they're going the right direction. And then the last principle that he talks about is the heart of the shepherd. And just in a few words, it's the idea of loving the sheep. You have to love the sheep. If you don't love the sheep, you'll never do any of these principles. You have to love them. We spent a lot of time last night talking about the idea of love and praying into the weekend and the work here about love, the kind of love that's seen in the heart of Christ. And I'll tell you, the heart of the shepherd is one of love. Jesus said to them that he had loved them to the end. And we're going to have to do the same. You're going to have to love them. So, how do we overcome these challenges? We're going to have to understand roles. And one of those roles is the idea of the way of the shepherd. Now, in congregations, and this was mentioned here, the idea of why some don't want to lead is because of commitment. This past September, I had the opportunity of going to a workshop called Beside Still Waters in Manford, Oklahoma. It's a workshop they do every year. It's a workshop put on by elders for elders, or potential elders, or people who think one day they might be an elder. And they only focus on the positive things about the role. They don't deal with the issues and the challenges. They don't deal with any of that kind of stuff. They're trying to emphasize the beauty of the role that exists in the church. Well, my favorite part is Friday night. Because I'm very good friends with one of the elders there, I always stay with him, which gives me the opportunity on Friday night to have dinner with all of the speakers for Saturday. And they always bring up something to try to get discussion going. So one of the elders at Manford asked the group of speakers, as we're sitting around the table, they asked them, how do you get people committed? How do you get people in a congregation committed? And of course, all of them had some different ideas. And I don't know if you know who Ken Jones is or not, but Ken Jones is now the president of Oklahoma Christian University. And he's become a very good friend, and I really appreciate his leadership in a lot of ways. But Ken sat and listened for the longest time, and then he finally leaned up on the table, and he made just the most profound statement. He said that connection always comes before commitment. If we don't get people connected to Christ, if we don't get them connected to the body, they'll never be committed. Our role as leaders is to get people connected, because if we don't get them connected, they will never be committed. In fact, you can almost look around in a congregation and you can see people who are not committed, they're not connected. They're either not connected to Jesus or they're not connected to the body, or both. So our task is to get them connected. Now, on the other hand, I'm thinking in terms of engaged, how you get people engaged. And I started thinking, well, you've got to equip people before you can get them engaged. You know, we talk about trying to find people to be teachers. We try to find people to be chaperones, or we try to find people to do these various roles that we need in the church. And the problem is instead of equipping them first, we ask for volunteers. One of the worst systems in the world. We got a sign-up sheet back there on the bulletin board. We'd like for everybody who would like to volunteer for this task, if you would please sign up. 3 weeks later, we're making the same announcement because nobody signed up. Everybody's thinking that somebody else will do it. Something that anybody could do, but nobody did, because everybody was thinking somebody else would do what anybody could do, but nobody did. You want me to say it again? I would like to say I made that up on the fly, but I think I read that somewhere once before. And I say it different every time. I don't think I ever get it right. But the point is, if we're not equipping people, see, that's the role. When you read Ephesians 4, verse 12, He appointed some as apostles. He appointed some as prophets, some as evangelists, pastors, teachers. And verse 12 says, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service. How are saints going to do the work of service if they're not equipped? You can't ask somebody who's a mechanic to be a teacher in a Bible class without equipping him to do so. And you can't expect him to learn how to do that by sitting in a Bible class. That's not how that works. So you're going to have to find ways, and you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to think outside the box. You're going to have to do the types of things that are going to help get people equipped if you want them engaged. You're going to have to get them connected if you want them committed. And so if we're going to overcome these challenges, then those are 4 ideas that we're going to have to think about. We're going to have to be people of vision. We're going to have to embrace change. We're going to have to understand what the roles are. Now, I didn't take the time to go in talking about deacons. You know what the funny thing about deacons is? We always think of deacons' roles as being physical. Where is that in Scripture?
Well, because the others are taking care of the elders, you see.
Isn't that fascinating? You know, they didn't have buildings in the first century. They didn't have curriculum in the first century. They didn't have to have a deacon who was over education or over the property. I mean, come to think of it, do I have to be a deacon in order to change a light bulb? Do I have to be a deacon to vacuum?
I might to see a need.
Do I have to be a deacon to mow the grass? Do I have to be a deacon to order curriculum? Why do we put deacons over that stuff? Why don't we put members in the congregation who are passionate about those areas over that stuff? Why is it that we've got to assign that to a deacon? Because we've got to have somebody with a title. Do you know the only thing it states in Scripture about deacons is that they held or to hold to the mysteries of the faith? Isn't that interesting? I really believe that a deacon's role and responsibility is more spiritual in nature than physical. I see the role of deacons and elders as being all about the spiritual health and well-being of a congregation. Because there are plenty of people sitting in the chairs that can mow the grass and change light bulbs and vacuum the floors and all that kind of stuff. But they're not going to do that as long as they got somebody else to do it. My philosophy has been people will let you do whatever you will do. And if you got a deacon who will do it, they're not going to. Find people, know their strengths. If you know that somebody's passionate about maintenance, man, put them over it. They don't have to be a deacon to do that. Find people of what they're passionate about, know what their strengths are, and build a ministry around that strength. They will feel like they're contributing, and they are, to the growth and development of the church. Let deacons and elders or shepherds focus on the spiritual health and well-being of God's people. All right. Last quote, we're going to take a break. I love this. Men make history and not the other way around. In periods where there is no leadership, society stands still, and so does the church. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. Let's do that, shall we? All right. Break time.